Thank you all so much for being here this evening. We have a packed agenda, so I want to make sure that I'm being respectful of everyone's time. In terms of logistics, I'm going to ask Commissioner Jones to come forward. So if you are one of our invited speakers, we want to make sure that you have access to a microphone. So Commissioner Jones, I don't see Councilman Conti here or Mr. O'Brien. Does anybody else? Okay, and let's see. Is Mr. Robinson, Patrick Robinson? We're going to have you come up also. Okay, yes, please. You can come up. One of the representatives from the school district. Okay, thank you all so much. I'm going to call this Public Safety Committee meeting to order. Today's date is April 29th. The time is 6:03 p.m. My name is Dorcia Pleers. I am the chair of the Public Safety Committee, but also the council member that represents the First Ward in the city of Albany. Joining me in terms of Public Safety Committee members, we have Councilman Alfredo Ballerin, Councilman Kelly Kimbrough, Councilman Joe Igo, representing the Public Safety Committee. And then in terms of General Council members, we have our Council President, Corey Ellis. We have Councilman Jamel Robinson, Councilwoman Kathy Fahey, Councilman Jack Flynn, Councilman Derek Johnson, Councilwoman Joyce Love, Councilman Owusu Anani. What I'm going to do is ask our special guests to introduce themselves and who or what organizations or entities they represent. And I'm going to start with our police chief. So I'll turn it over to you, Chief. Is it on?
Okay, better? Testing, test.
Yep, we can hear you.
You have to hold it? Yeah. Oh, did. Okay, testing. Better? Yeah. Okay, thank you, Ms. Applers. And Eric Hawkins from the Police Department, Police Chief, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Hi, good evening. My name is Carrie Canzoni Ball. I'm the Director of People Personnel Services for the City School District of Albany. Thank you.
Jonathan Jones, the Commissioner of Recreation, Youth, and Workforce Services, City of Albany.
Jerome Brown, Director for 518 SNUG.
Jamel Hood, House of Hoops and Youth Family Advocate, Youth and Children Family Advocate.
Patrick Robinson, I'm here on behalf of Albany Concerned Citizens, and thank you for having me.
Melanie Metzger, Albany Public Library Assistant Director.
Reverend Michael Poindexter, Metropolitan Baptist Church here in the city of Albany.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. So I would like to welcome members from the public here also, and thank you all for being here. You'll have the opportunity to take part in the dialogue this evening. In terms of the agenda for this evening, this is a unique public safety meeting because what we want to do is hear from our community leaders and stakeholders This is a very important and crucial issue, talking about preventing violence in our city. And last year, as you all are aware, there was an uptick in violence during the summer months. And concerned citizens and community leaders, everyone was scratching their heads and asking the questions, what can we do? What should we be doing? And so the idea is to come together to be preventive and have a dialogue that will help us to work towards solutions and a plan to address violence in our community. So we've invited members of our community to the table, people who have taken an active role in violence prevention, who have stepped up without being asked to step up, and they have literally taken on this issue in our community, and we want to make sure that their voices are at the table. So the first item on the agenda that we will be discussing is debriefing the 2018 violence prevention efforts, what worked and what could be enhanced. And so that's the question that I'm going to throw out to our community stakeholders. And of course, council members are encouraged to ask questions or contribute to that with their thoughts. The second item is action steps and solutions. What preventive steps have already been taken? So we know that some of us have been hard at work since last summer working on the issue, and so we want to hear what steps have been taken thus far. And then the next agenda item is talking about what steps need to be taken. So this will be a solution-oriented agenda item. We want solutions brought to the table, and then we'll transition to next steps, and then I'll open it up for public comment. And if you are a member of the public and would like to speak, I encourage you to sign up so that we can call you up at that time. And then after we hear from the members of the public, we will adjourn. So with that, I am going to start with the first item, and that is debriefing the violence prevention efforts from 2018, what worked and what could be enhanced. And I am going to open that up to our colleagues and community leaders. Feel free to chime in, start with your name, and we would love to hear from you. Again, based on what happened last summer, what worked and what could be enhanced? Yes.
I feel like several things will work. I feel like number one, programming. We need to increase our funding for programming. I feel I also feel another thing that declined in the violence is actually that what the police action that was being taken. It was like several arrests and stuff that was made with some of the city's homicides last year. So instead of the back and forth retaliation thing, the community was very pleased with most of the arrests that was made in some of these recent homicides. So that was we feel like that was a start. But I'm real big on programming and giving not only kids but a young adult something to do as well. Yeah, yes.
Yes, Chief.
And it may be helpful to frame this conversation with a couple of statistics from last year. And the chairperson is absolutely correct. There was an uptick in certain categories of violence last year.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, and this is something that gets overlooked somewhat, overall crime went down last year in comparison to 2017. In fact, violent crime declined by 8% from
Mm-hmm.
2017 to 2018. Property crimes decreased by 7% from 2017 to 2018, with an overall reduction in crimes, in total crimes, of an 8% reduction from 2017 to 2018. But what caused, and obviously I wasn't here during a lot of the violence that was occurring during the summer, but I'm sure what caused a lot of the concern was the uptick in homicides. And there was a 75% increase in homicides from 2017 to 2018. But as I take a deeper dive into these statistics and looking at some longer term trends, I'm encouraged by what I see statistically. And what I'm seeing is that overall the crime rate is in fact dropping in the city of Albany. But there's this disturbing trend, obviously, of firearms-related crimes. And just as the gentleman here noted, though, one encouraging thing about that is that of the 14 homicides that the city of Albany experienced last year, 12 of those homicides have resulted in an arrest and prosecution. And in at least one of the other two, the suspect is known, and it's just a matter of time before there's a substantive case that's made against that person. So there really is some progress being made, and I agree with this gentleman here about the impact of prosecutions and arrests with violent crimes. And in fact, there's a number of researchers around the country who support that fact that arrests and prosecutions have a huge impact in terms of deterrence with homicides in the future. And so that's a very positive trend that we're seeing in this community. And of those 14 homicides that we had last year, 12 of those homicides involved ongoing disputes, domestic-related issues, or some sort of drug or substance abuse type issue. So from looking at these statistics, what it's telling me is that a lot of these crimes, the violent crimes, the homicides that this city experienced last year were the result of some underlying issues that the city has been working on for many, many years, but some of these things are just so unpredictable when you're talking about some of these social issues that are driving some of these crimes that we're seeing. But the foundation in terms of the strategies that this city has adopted over the years, from my perspective, looks sound. It looks as if it is something that has a very solid foundation, and I'm very, very comfortable going forward with that type of strategy, that overarching philosophy that this city has adopted and this police department has adopted over the years, with some adjustments. Because obviously there's some little things that we're seeing in here that we can make some adjustments on in order to have some more positive outcomes. But just as a general overview, and some of the things that we're looking at in the police department as we move forward this summer, we've kind of broken this up into a couple of different strategies. And one is our community policing related strategies, where we're working very, very closely with our community in order to identify some of the social factors that are driving some of the issues that we're seeing in our community, and we're working very closely with these institutions that are dealing with those sorts of issues. We have a very, very robust community policing program, as the members of this council and others in this community know, and we will continue to support those community policing officers that we have, and some of these other officers who are out there working very, very closely with folks in our community and identifying and resolving some of these issues. And we're also exploring even more partnerships and collaborations with outside agencies, and strengthening some of the partnerships that we have internally with some of our departments, like recreation and codes and corp counsel and some of those other departments, so that we can have a more coordinated effort when we're looking at some of the issues that are occurring. And as we look at some of those community-related type focuses and strategies, we also have a very, very robust targeted enforcement policy and strategy as well, because the fact of the matter is we still have to identify those individuals in our community who are committing violent crimes, and we have to make sure that there is some accountability in this, with those individuals who are doing so. So we're working very, very closely with agencies and other organizations in the law enforcement world in order to identify some of those individuals and have the appropriate response for those. And so thank you, and I'll be glad to answer any questions throughout this forum regarding that.
Thank you, Chief, for providing us with some context and helping to frame the issue. If it works, and I'm comfortable with this being free-flowing, the Chief talked about what happened in terms of arrests made as a result of the 14 homicides last year, and then transition to talk about what the department has been doing and will continue to do. And so if there are others who want to kind of talk about those in tandem, debriefing what happened and talk about what they're working on, I'm very comfortable with you doing that. I know that Reverend Poindexter and Dr. Miller both led initiatives over the summer. Prayer at City Hall, a violence prevention event at Green Tech. Would the two of you like to comment on those events, and if you felt that they were successful, and are they things that we can look towards or we can look to implement as we transition into this summer?
Yes. Hello. So I definitely, we did a, hello. Sorry, I can speak up. We did a ceasefire where we did almost a parody on guns, and so we asked for, instead of making it to where people felt excluded, we tried to include people. So we asked people of all, because all people at some point in time have played with water guns, and so we asked them, we had a water fight as a ceasefire. So let's put the violence down and let's replace the violence with something else that's juvenile or childlike. And so we had a decent turnout. We had kids, we had community members who came out. We tried to get everyone possibly to come out and participate in the ceasefire. But part of the ceasefire was also asking people not to participate in violence as a ceasefire of violence for a certain amount of time and trying to get a stop in the violence. So we did see success in that, but I do think that a greater turnout could have happened. I think if there had been more just community and advertisement and support around it and made it into a big thing. I think the problem is that there were other events at the same time, and so a lot of times the collaboration isn't there from the different groups and different entities that are happening. So it makes it so the groups of people are pulled in different directions. But I definitely think it's something that could be even, I know we've done that. We've also done the Violence Prevention Week, which I believe was in, I want to say October, that we've done some things around Violence Prevention Week, where we bring the officers in to talk to students, and then we had a nonviolence, and then we had a nonviolence all-star basketball game for all the talent in the area, and we try to get all the schools to commit to being nonviolent for that week. So again, trying to put action to it. So that was our thing, is try to make it real actionable, because at times we see that there's events or things that happen, but what's the takeaway, what's the action? So our action was trying to get people to commit to being nonviolent. And I do think it could work, but we need a greater participation.
So we've had prayer in a variety of contexts. We've prayed at City Hall. We've prayed. I showed up to the courts and prayed with Albany Concerned Citizens, with Patrick Robinson. We've prayed. We had an emergency prayer meeting when the murder started escalating. We had an emergency prayer meeting at Metropolitan. And so we took that initiative upon ourselves to not only pray, but to be engaged as community stakeholders. And I think the more that we as community stakeholders are engaged in our community, but also we are empowered by the Common Council and the powers that be to share our voice, to share the concerns that are within our communities, that's when change starts to happen. And so we at Metropolitan and then even myself and working with Councilman Robinson, talking with citizens, talking with residents who were impacted by senseless gun violence, attending events where people needed to just go and grieve. I know Reverend Lisa Good was a huge contributor with helping people work through their grief. And these are all people who are not employees of the city, but are empowered by themselves to change what's going on within our city. So it really boils down to citizen empowerment and you all understanding the role that citizens play within our communities.
Thank you. I would like to just check in with the library and also the school district to see if you all have anything to contribute in terms of things that you implemented last summer. And then if you care to chime in on some things that you are working on implementing for this summer, we would love to hear.
Well, I think it's not just summer. Since our buildings are open year-round, most of our initiatives are done as a year-round and not specifically summer activities. But what we have found in the past that has worked the best for us is our partnerships. We definitely partner with all the neighborhood engagement unit officers, SNUG, the neighborhood associations, the school district. We're always in constant communication with all of those. So when we see stuff, we always kind of make the comment that we're the canary in the coal mines, that we start seeing stuff bubbling up in the library before they hit big time in the community. And so as soon as we start seeing those issues, we definitely connect with our partners and try to stave it off. Does it work? Most of the time, yes. We're seeing, some issues in the Arbor Hill neighborhood right now that many of you have been involved with, and we've had community discussions. We just hosted 2 community forums last week to address the issue. We're hoping to see what comes out of those because we were given many ideas and suggestions by not only members in this room, but also members of the community. And so we're hoping to take some action and see what we can do from those.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I would like to just echo partnerships. I think that's really important. We've been engaged in continuing to build strong partnerships with our community agencies, such as the police department. We've trained alongside them in crisis intervention that the school district sponsored, standard response protocol for crisis management, building relationships, running programs like GREAT, gang resistance education and training. We started to pilot some of that. We engaged in the leadership program and continue to build partnerships with agencies like SNUG. We are connecting with them and have seen such a great impact that they've had in building relationships. So we know that our students thrive when they're engaged in work and play and have strong relationships with the adults around them and in their community. We're pleased to say that this summer we'll be offering 6 summer school programs at 7 different sites. We'll be serving breakfast and lunch. Transportation will be provided for elementary age students, and middle school and high school students will have transportation available if they're 1.5 miles or more further away from the site.
Thank you. We've heard 518 SNUG mentioned quite a bit. Mr. Brown, would you chime in? I know that you are boots on the ground, and if you could speak to some of your efforts, that would be appreciated.
Oh, yes. Excuse me. First, I want to commend Albany Concerned Citizens, Flay and Jamel Hood here, because I feel like it wasn't just them, but it was also some smaller groups that was in there, and I feel like last year the city was mobilized. Like, there was a lot of people that came out, and they took a part of this as trying to change the community around. So that's one thing we got to continue to build on. We can't just let that fall to the wayside. We have to continue to get more partners and more people mobilized out here, because you can only march for so long, you can only do these type of things for so long, but as far as getting out here and building these relationships in the community and go and talk to these kids instead of just running them off the corner to find out why they're really on the corner. That's where we're going to get to the root of the problem at, and trying to find other alternatives for them. But our biggest thing is still, like they said, making these partnerships. I mean, even with the library, or even going to the parent universities with Albany schools and talking to these parents who really didn't know about these other entities that exist that's able to assist them when these problems occur. We stay committed. I mean, we out here, we don't really look to broadcast, you know, where we're going or anything like that, because just the way that we work. But anybody that they can always call us, and we have, as long as we're able, we'll be there. I mean, we're going to continue our efforts. We got our 5th annual Guns Down Peace March coming up June 29th, the last Saturday in June. June is Gun Violence Awareness Month, so, you know, that's one thing that we always want to take action and put a stamp on it for that month. You know, we start the month, June 2nd is actually Gun Violence Awareness Day, but we start events that day and we try to go through the month with these events. But the thing is, we have to find things for these youth to do. If we don't find things for them to do, then, of course, they're going to be left to their own vices. And we got to make sure things is family orientated, so the youth ain't just out there. I mean, it's other parents and things out there also. And you can bring somebody who's, you know, 8 years old out there, long as it's a good time. But we have to just engage the community. We have to make sure that we stay out there and keep talking to them. We cannot shut them out. So the youth is very important.
Thank you. Mr. Hood.
Yes, I'd like to commend this guy, Mr. Brown, here too as well. I just want to thank you for, we had a tough summer. We had a really, really tough summer, and it took all of us. The churches came out, a lot of local politicians came out, and I was saying to Jack Flynn earlier when I got in here, I said, it's the small things. So I'll call up Ms. Love. Ms. Love, we need waters, we need juicies, we need food. Call Jackie, comes down with the waters. I think building trust and hope, starting with trust from the police force, bringing in the police force, they can just pop up on some of those hot zones and just standing out there, shaking hands, even with some of the guys that might be offenders, just getting to know them, just rubbing elbows with them and giving them some advice before you lay the hammer down. Just making your presence felt, knocking on doors and asking Miss Such and Such from 239 2nd Street, do you need anything, or is food in the house? Making those type of small efforts like that will bring back the trust and the hope in our community. Again, it starts from our elders in the community. Ms. Love here, she's like a mother in the community. She knows who the shakers, the makers, she can get things done. And so with those type of resources, I think, you know, even including uptown and downtown, we should be able to make this another safe summer in 2019. I suggest that the schools, many of these schools should be open from critical hours from 6 to 9. There's a lot of schools that are closed during the week, and certain kids. I know I'm coming up back in '88. I couldn't go past the Palace Theater, and if I had a school that I can go to and play some basketball or some tennis or whatever, any kind of sport, I felt safe. But some of these kids need like safe zones, and we need to provide that for them. And again, building trust and hope, just coming out, getting out the police car, having more police presence in the streets, attending our events. A lot of the politicians come out, shake hands, and be a part of it, even suit up and play some basketball, kickball, or softball. You know, we got to bring back that old feeling again, because we shouldn't be afraid to be in our own backyard. You know, there's plenty of kids that want to come to our neighborhoods and join us. And there's plenty of kids that are in the house that can't come out of the house because it's unsafe to come out the house. So how do we bring that back? And that's the big question. And it's real simple. It's very simple. And that's just caring, understanding that people have needs, people have wants, and people want to do the right thing. Kids want to really do the right thing. You know, you walk up on a kid and he has a gun and he trusts you, he might just say, you know what, I'm going to give that to you. I'm gonna give it to you. He might not give it to a cop, but he can give it to one of us and say, yo, listen, I'm not in the mood, right? I want to change my life. So I know I'm very passionate about this, and we had a heck of a summer marching and doing a lot of different things. I saw, kudos to Chief walking into this situation and then coming in here, cleaning it all up. So I just thank you for having me here today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Robinson, did you want to chime in? I know that you both were instrumental in leading those community rallies. Did you have any additional things to add?
Like Mr. Brown was saying, it's all about collaboration with the different agencies. And I want to piggyback off of what Dr. Miller was saying too. And like a lot of times there's several different events going on at one time, and the people are forced to kind of pick a side or whatever the case may be. And it all starts in here. We all got to be a little more active in participating in each other's events and stuff like that. Like Mr. Hood was saying, it's all about caring and trying to change people's lives, so.
Thank you. Commissioner Jones, wanted to pivot to you because one of the things that came up was the safe zones for youth, and then also the lack of spaces for youth to engage during critical hours. You, in partnership with the library, just held community meetings. Can you speak to that and what will come out of those meetings that will potentially address that issue?
Yes. So we did have 2 sessions on last Thursday with the community about what has been happening in front of the library. I do want to stress, though, that this was not a generalization of our community. It was not a generalization of our youth. And what we found out, and what I had already known by being there physically on the site for 2 weeks, was that there were young people who need attention. Not that they were seeking negative attention. They may go home and no one pays attention to them. So the best way to do that is to act out to get attention. We understand that for the city's perspective, particularly recreation, there's 2 things that I love to do. One is to partner, and the second is to hire within the community so that the people make recognizable faces on who's telling them what to do. Because rules without relationship equal rebellion, and that is a fact. If you don't have a relationship with someone and someone tries to give you some rules, naturally, if you don't like it, you're going to rebel. So what we saw at the meeting on Thursday was that there's a lot of caring adults. There's some people who are more willingly to actively get involved on their own personal time. And there are other people who we know about their wants, and we need to find other ways to connect to them. That's something I'm going to be working with pretty much everybody in this room. We've hired coaches in this room. We've hired people in this room to help our community. But at the end of the day, I think that a lot of our young people are not doing the wrong thing because they're bad. They're doing the wrong thing because they're missing the guidance on what to do and how to do it. We have some really intelligent young people. So in our summer youth employment program, when we have them on Fridays, the reason why we added the Friday edition was because we wanted to create a safe space for them, not only to learn, but to be around places they had never been before, whether that's a college, university, whether that's in front of a doctor, teaching them about how they got where they are. And that's some of the efforts that we worked on last year. There's a lot we can enhance on. We only have 2 actual community centers. One is really not a community center. It's more a garage that's been turned into a community center. We have a boxing gym. And we also have Lincoln Fitness. And so one of the things we did was we realized that a lot of young people were at the Arbor Hill Library, and if they weren't going to go to the Arbor Hill Community Center, then we would bring the Arbor Hill Community Center and some of its programs in the boxing gym to the library. So we had kids for the first time putting on gloves, getting out aggression from the long day they had in class, and we saw, a lot of kids getting engaged. I just came from the library, and Melody was there as well, and it is a normal library. There are kids there engaging with one another. They're on technology. And so I've been fortunate in this role to actually talk to young people. I know who they are. I live where they live. And that has helped me gain their trust. But more of what we need to do as caring adults is actively engaged. A lot of people doing a lot of talking, and I think that's great. But at the end of the day, we have to stop talking and start to get to action. And the people in this room have done a lot of that, and I commend them for that, but more is needed for sure.
Thank you. All right, I want to note that Councilwoman Judy Dochette has joined us. And then we have a representative from the mayor's office, Eva Bass, who was here. And Eva, if you want to chime into the conversation, feel free to come forward. There's a microphone here. If you have some remarks that you want to bring forward from the mayor's office. While we wait for Eva, I do want to open it up for council members. We've heard quite a bit to ask questions or make comment, and I'll start with the Public Safety Committee members, and I'll start over here with you, Joe, if there are questions or comments.
Same. Something I know the city needs is more places for the kids to go, like you said. I think a great step would be, and fill a void again, is the old YMCA building up on Washington Avenue. Used to have midnight hoops, this and that and everything, and it's just sitting there going to waste. I think somehow that has to get funded, be reopened, and get some good programs going in there. Keep them off the streets.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I want to thank all of you for taking your time to be here today. I do remember many years ago when I started my career working at the YMCA and running many of those youth programs in the evenings, in the weekdays, because that's what you saw least activities. But the problem was and still is, there's very limited locations to have those type of opportunities. So I think we need to have an honest and serious and maybe even difficult discussion about how can we maximize all of our city, and when I say city, I don't mean City of Albany owned, I don't mean school district owned, I don't mean library owned, I don't mean private, public, I mean all of them. All of our city's resources to address these issues. And it means making it inconvenient, maybe for some of our staff, and for some of our policies that we may have. We may have to look at some of our policies of how can we expand the hours of operations, how can we expand the opportunities for access to our resources. And we can't shy away from those conversations. So that's one thing I want to challenge all of our stakeholders that are here today, because it's not too often when we have all of our stakeholders here. And I do believe that we all are sometimes acting in very difficult situations where we all have limited budgets, we all have limited staff, we all have limited resources. But I think it's good for us to come together, have these tough discussions, and find out how can we share our resources to be able to actually create better access and address some of these issues. So that's one. When we talk about having these type of programs, we need to have a location to have these programs. My second statement, and it's got a couple of questions. Questions are for you, Chief. A lot of the homicides that happened last year weren't done by our teens. they were done by adults. So we really need to also have a serious discussion about what are we doing to that population that ages out of these programs, and what are we doing to try to address those populations? What are we doing to try to address the population that is coming back from being incarcerated? How are we addressing that population? How are we reaching out to that population before they get caught up again into their troubled situations? So part of my question is, and Chief, I'm not sure if you have this data, if you could share it with us, those who were the victims and the age range from the victims and the aggressors. So we can have a conversation of how we deal with that population before they become either or. Also, if you have the data about how many shot fire calls were last summer, because it's one thing to have the homicides. I mean, that's the extreme, and we know we had 12 homicides that have related to guns. But how many shot fire calls were there in our community? Because I live in a community where I've heard several shots fired this past summer, and it was higher than the previous year. So if we have the data of how many shot fire calls we had in 2017 versus 2018, to see if there's an increase, even though there's been a reduction in other crime, has there been an increase in guns in our city? And then the third question, which goes to all of us, what do we do to deal with these illegal guns in our community? What do we do to address this problem and address it? So those are my questions, those are my remarks, and I look forward to the spirited discussion that hopefully it sparks.
Thank you, Councilman Valorant. So, Chief, I know there were several questions directed to you, and I'll give you the opportunity to speak. And then if there are community stakeholders who would like to chime in, we'll give you the floor also.
All right, thank you, Chair. And regarding your question about the ages of the victims and suspects, they were all adults. So we're, and I don't have the exact ages of those who were involved, but they were all. If I had to put a guesstimate on it, I would say somewhere between the ages of 18 and 20, mid-20s or early 30s or something like that. So all adults. So you're absolutely right that we didn't have any involving any juveniles. And in terms of the shots fired, I don't have the 2017 figures, but I do have year-to-date figures for this year compared to last year at this point, and also have the 5-year averages and how they compare to that year-to-date. And in terms of confirmed shots fired, year-to-date we're up 18%, and confirmed shots fired. And in terms of reported shooting incidents, year-to-date, we are down 30% from last year. And in terms of reported shooting victims, year-to-date, we're down 30%. And in terms of crime arrests involving handguns, we're up 65%, meaning that we've arrested more individuals for handgun-related incidents year-to-date this year compared to last year. And in terms of recovered firearms, year-to-date, we're down 14%.
Thank you, Chief. Comments? Okay, any comments from the community stakeholders regarding Mr. Valorant's questions before we transition to other? Okay, so we'll school district.
If I could, on the reentry question about what are we doing for people who are coming out of prison, the Department of Youth and Workforce Services collaborated with Boston Southeast Arkansas, Louisville, and Washington, D.C., to win a grant from the Department of Labor to provide job training for people who are coming out of prison. We partner with the probation department here and other entities, even some people here to help us with that. We had our first ever job fair for people who are coming home. It was called the Second Chance Job Fair. We had over 27 employees, local employees, who did interviews. We had over 200 people who came to that. And the good thing about it was there were over 100 interviews. We're still collecting data on how many jobs were started after those interviews. But that's a step in the right direction, at least from our department, using those federal funds and using that grant money to put people into jobs, but put people into jobs that, one, they're trained for, that we can use federal funds to train them, and then second, in employees and with employers that are going to value their contribution, no matter in spite of what they may have done or may have been charged of. So that's one step that our department is doing to further, the advancement of our community in respect to that question.
Thank you. Okay, school district, Mr. Brown, and then Dr. Miller had his hand raised, and then Minister Poindexter, and then I'll get to the council members.
Thank you. I would also like to add, to engage youth ages 14 through 24, we received federal grant funding along with Rochester City School District to provide a program called Connecting Youth in Transition. So any youth from, again, the ages 14 through 24 who have had contact with law enforcement, who have dropped out of school, have become disengaged, at risk for dropping out, we provide, anyone can refer to that program, and we provide intensive case management, wraparound services, so whatever their need is, based upon a need assessment, we put them in touch with an agency throughout the city or within the school district to help them out. We have other programs, too, to connect disengaged youth as well. We have a FAST team, which stands for Family and Student Support Team, so students that might be going through the discipline process, we're looking to divert them from long-term suspension, prevent a PINS referral. So we, again, have tiered levels of support to help any social emotional needs, substance abuse, counseling needs that they might have as well. And we also have opened several new behavioral health clinics in partnership with Parsons Northern Rivers. We've housed one at Tony Clement Center for Education, Edmund J. O'Neill Middle School.
Can you speak up a little?
Oh, I'm sorry. We've created several new behavioral health clinics housed, co-located right within our schools. We have several that have been operating for a number of years. This year, we've added one at Edmund J. O'Neill Middle School, Tony Clement Center, the Albany International Center. So we continue to grow that program, and that's a 12-month program where students and families can receive medication management, assessment, diagnosis, and treatment in the form of counseling. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
I just want to say, as far as the older individuals, we had an individual coming to our office who, he's actually one of the homicide victims from last year, and he had just did a 20-year term, and he was working with one of my workers, and, but it's kind of difficult, when you can't find somebody something in a quick amount of time, and he ended up, he stopped coming to the office, and he was one of the results of the homicide last year. But you just gotta try to find these guys better opportunities a little quicker, or they're gonna lose their faith in everything. Even from the Second Chance Job Fair, what we participated in with City of Albany last year, we was able to build a connection with one of the warehouses, and right now they're currently taking some of our participants in, and we have 3 participants who's gainfully employed out there right now. As far as the shots fired, I just wanted to say, like, I never really seen communities like Albany Police Department that actually treat a shots fired scene the way they do. They collect them shells like if it was a shooting, and they'll prosecute somebody later on if they're able to tie them sales to any type of homicides or shooting. So I commend them on that. But the last thing I want to say is about what do we do about these guns? And you know, you can create all the laws you want. I'm from the street, and the thing about it, whether it was guns or whether it was drugs, where it's a drought, where we know where it's at, we're going to get it. So if you don't change the mindsets of the people, then it don't matter what you do, what laws you make. You have to change the mindsets of the people, or not, they're going to go get it wherever it's at, whatever state is in. There can be laws everywhere. They're going to find that one state with them loopholes, and they're going to go get it and bring it back, and they're going to sell it for triple the worth. So until you change the mindsets, you ain't going to do nothing. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I definitely would agree with Mr. Brown about changing their mindsets, and I think that's where we need to start, because the adults are committing a crime with one's kids. And so the part of the issue is that we need to find a comprehensive model to help the youth in this city and to be more of a resource and be more supportive. As you all know, I believe it's somewhere around 4th grade they start to determine whether or not how many prisons should be built based off on how well kids are testing. And so, for example, I believe this year 84% of my 9th graders were reading on between a 4th and a 6th grade level coming into us. So we have to get them earlier, and we have to learn we have to support these young people earlier. And so one thing that I would ask the city, and I honestly don't know the answer to this, what resources are available so we could come up with some comprehensive models. And then I think we also have to all look to put our guards down and stop the political lines and start working together to comprehensively support our kids. So how do we start some youth programs as a team that would help kids beyond this regular school day? Because obviously there's still deficiencies that are happening. How do we have a citywide rec program where potentially the city would fund certain rec workers and then open our doors for different buildings? So whether it's Green Tech or Albany City School District or other charter school districts, and we get kids off the street from 6 to 9, and we have some organized programs plus some fun things for them to do. Is there an opportunity? So that would provide jobs for city rec workers. That would provide safe places for them to be. There's different programs out there for funding for meals. I mean, there's things that we could do, but we have to be willing to step up and do that and have some action, and people got to put their money where their mouth is. So if people are willing to do that, I know myself, I'm more than willing to do that. And like you shared, sir, we have to be willing to share our resources. But usually if we're all being honest, there's these political lines in this room where we don't converse with them or we don't deal with them. We do our own thing. And that needs to stop. We need to work together because these kids are all our kids in this community.
Thank you. I will add, in response to that, Dr. Miller, an equity package piece of legislation was put together by myself, Council President Corey Ellis, and input from council members here. That legislation has been introduced. It has to be voted on, but included in that equity package is funding for violence prevention initiatives. So that's not the full extent of the legislation, but there is resources baked into that legislation for violence prevention programs. I just wanted to plug that, but I have made note of your question. What resources can the city provide to entities like schools to make sure we have proper staff and programming to support violence prevention efforts? So I thank you for that. And then the political lines that we need to work on tearing down those political silos. Yes, Reverend Poindexter.
So we focused on, 8 years ago, we saw that there was a huge need of summer childcare where parents can take their kids that was affordable. And so we created a summer camp. We saw a direct need in our community for a safe place for parents and adults to bring their kids. So we created a summer camp, and the summer camp cost at the time was $50 a week, and it was for full day, 8-hour camp. They swam every day, took them to Zoom Flume, the Bronx Zoo. You know, we cooked them healthy meals every single day at the camp. They got T-shirts. And for the ones, for parents that couldn't afford the $50 per week, we scholarshiped their children. You know, I can't remember a single parent that we turned away. You know, if you needed a space for your kid to come during the summer, we did it. And so the direct ramifications was that that parent who needed to go to work during the summer because school was out could now keep their job and not have fear of losing their job because they had childcare to take their kids. We're now 8 years in, and as of last year, our camp was 265 kids, and we went from $50 a week to $55 a week, and our program hasn't changed. We've been able to maximize, and you know, we don't do it for profit. We don't make money on the camp. We are able to subsidize the cost of the camp because we partner with community partners who provide us resources, in-kind services, and financial resources to be able to do the services that we need to do for our community. There's a literacy component. Dr. Miller talked about the 3rd to 4th grade child pipeline. And every day in the morning for 30 to 45 minutes, our kids read. We try to do our best to find out their reading levels and get them reading appropriate books, but they read every single morning at our summer camp. We've employed upwards of 15 to 25 people in our community every single summer. We've posted the applications on Facebook and our website so that the people of our community could work in our community and reap the economic stimulation from what our camp provides. At Metropolitan, every year we give 500 to 600 food baskets during turkey time. Thanksgiving is what they call it. We've done Community Day where we've given away 600 backpacks filled with school supplies and free haircuts and clothes and shoes. And so I think, echoing what Dr. Miller said and others said, it's really just a matter of stepping up to the plate and seeing what needs to be done and cutting through the red tape to just do the job. And so that's what we've done at Metropolitan. And Flay, we came last year to Power Breakfast had in the rotunda when the murders were escalating in the rotunda downstairs, they had a Power Breakfast meeting at 6 o'clock, and the room was filled, and people were able to state what their needs were. What do you need in order to make our community better? And Flay said that they needed water. They had Little League, and they needed money for the expenses of Little League, and they needed water. The next day, we brought him about 5 or 6, 7 cases of water, because but we won't know the need unless those forums are created for the needs to be presented, and then people move beyond themselves and step up to the plate to meet those needs.
Thank you. Okay. So I want to give Eva the opportunity to respond as a representative from the city, and then I promise then I'll transition to our council members who are dying to ask questions and provide comments. Yes.
Hello, everybody. So in response, first I want to say that I appreciate everybody mentioning the importance of collaboration and working together on this kind of initiatives as well as others. The City of Albany is dedicated to provide as much access as possible to our underserved communities and beyond. What we're doing is looking at different ways that we can not only create platforms to have certain forums and gather information, but also work hard to make sure that we're strengthening our partnerships and making sure we're maximizing on our collaborations. One thing I would say is that we do look for more community buy-in, meaning we understand that the community wants us to identify the problems and the community has certain concerns. We're looking for community members to be more present so that we can be able to hear the things that you guys want us to address, look at, find some kind of resources for. I commend our Commissioner Jonathan Jones for all of his work with not only workforce development, our reentry population, but also with our youth population with employment and summer program and year-round programming. The City of Albany aims to provide as much as we can as far as platforms and space. We want people to maximize their use of our rotunda. Our rotunda applications are located in the clerk's office. We really would like you guys to utilize the space because we do realize that sometimes that is the boundary from you guys providing that kind of program or platform, I would say. But we definitely are working really hard to have more access to information and providing as much equity in the city of Albany as possible. I am the community outreach coordinator for the city, and I am looking to partner with anyone or any organization or business who is looking to address these issues, especially when it's centered around violence.
Thank you. Just to connect the dots, you said that the rotunda is available. Reverend Poindexter said there is a need to provide a platform for issues. It needs to be raised to a certain level. Is the rotunda available at no cost to community members and community leaders to use?
The rotunda is a $300 charge. However, it is to the discretion of the city to waive that. I cannot say it is for no cost, but it is case-by-case basis. Working alongside me and doing different things like that, so we will have rotunda events like we did with the Power Breakfast. We've done with press releases and things with 518 Snug. So as long as you connect with me and we figure out where the middle ground is, and as long as it's beneficial to the city of Albany, I personally don't have a problem with waiving that fee.
Thank you. And I'll plug our libraries who have free space that can be used also. Okay, council members, Anani sent me a text, so I want to give you the opportunity to ask your question, and then we'll transition to Councilman Johnson, Councilwoman Fahey, and Councilwoman Dochet.
Well, first off, thank you, Chair, for putting this gathering together and focusing on solutions. Earlier, I heard many of our guests talk about programming, lack of programming. My question is more so, what does more programming means? Is there something that you would like to see specifically? Is it sports that you would like to see more funding going towards? Is it more real-world job opportunities for our youth, or just in general? So if anyone would like to go into more details when you talk about more programming.
Yeah, I'll answer that, sure. More programming means also more opportunities for kids and young adults because just like this gentleman up here said, our homicide victims range in age of 18 all the way up to like 44 or something like that. So those people in their 30s, 40s, they need things to do too. People that's re-entering and having a hard time finding a job. Like, so when we say programming, of course, jobs and you know, in our community too, I feel like we have some mental health issues in our community that we need to address too. Like, we can't kind of jump and dance around it. Like, we definitely have some mental health issues, and that's affecting like our young adults. You know what I mean? And they need to be addressed. Like, that's my age bracket. I'm in my 40s. Like, the youth now, they get a lot of everything. Free haircuts, you know, free book bags. Like, we didn't get any of that stuff when I was in school coming up. We didn't have any of that. And somebody who, just like Mr. Brown was saying, a gentleman that unfortunately that was killed downtown after doing 20 years in prison and come home and, you know, trying to do right and find a job and wind up getting killed out here in these streets. Like, so when we're saying more program, we need more space. I feel too like the library in Arbor Hill, I feel like that's become more of a hangout because it's attractive because they have computers. Some of our kids, they don't have computer access at home. Like, we have to stop. We assume that everybody has these things and they don't. So the library is attractive because it's books there. There is computers, so they can go and get on Wi-Fi as in, you know, their home, and they don't have, you know, the access to that stuff. We have to spruce up our community center, our Arbor Hill Center. Like, we got to do something with that. So, you know, to make it attractive, so people will want to be there. Like after school, there's a school there. Like when school gets out, like we have to enhance our program so kids want to stay there as opposed to going somewhere else. They should want to stay there because we're providing something attractive for them to do.
Thank you. This is in response to the, okay.
Yeah,
Minister
yes.
Reverend Poindexter, and then Mr. Brown.
I think, one, the activities that Commissioner Jones and Department of Rec is doing as far as the sports camps is huge. I think that's great for the kids. And we've actually partnered with the city for the last 8 years to utilize the swimming pool for the past 7 years at no cost for our camp. But when I think of programs, I also think more beyond activities. I think about not only reentry programs like Mr. Brown talked about, but leverage the city's opportunity to impact community organizations, allowing the residents within the city to be able to become homeowners in the city that they live in. We have all of these dilapidated buildings with red X's on them. What programs is the city coming up with so that the residents who are residing around those properties can maybe have access to some sort of grant so that they can acquire the property and then live in the property? You take ownership of that which you love, and you take care of that which you own. And so moving beyond just activities for teens, sustainable programs that will increase the success of the families that reside within our city.
Thank you. Mr. Brown.
The programs that I'm thinking of are more of STEM-related programs. Like, you think about these kids, they all on the computer, so we can show them how to build their own computer. Because I remember when I first put my first CD burner in, and I lift that tower off, and I said, it's empty in here. I never knew how easy that would have been. And it's a program in Syracuse that's, because these kids have a short attention span, there's a program in Syracuse at SUNY, and it's not here, that have a drone building. In 6 weeks, they can get a drone building certification. And one of the biggest things right now, and you see 4, 5, 6 of them in the mall, is if we get a class showing them how to fix these screens on these cell phones and break these cell phones. I had a worker whose cell phone got ran over. I took it to the mall and they fixed it. So if we can teach them this, which isn't difficult to have a class for this, I think it'd be very beneficial.
Thank you. I want to mention in response, Michelle, our legislative aide, posted to the council website that the ACDA Albany Community Development Agency has grant funding for home ownership. So in response to your question, Reverend Poindexter, that information is now up on our the council's website. Thank you.
Thank you.
Facebook page.
Thank you.
Mr. Hood.
There was a program way back, and every meeting I go to, I mention this program because the Urban League was in charge of it. It was called PAVE, Progressive Adolescent Vocational Education Program. All right. First of all, there's 2 successful individuals that are gainfully employed. One's an Albany police officer. Her name is Ms. Timmons, and then you got Joe Bell, who lives in Atlanta right now. He's a former Albany resident. He has his own construction business. He's the Puff Daddy down in Atlanta. And so I'm saying that in good terms. But this program was designed, and it was coordinated through the state and Urban League granted, and you were a high school student, you had to come to the program, you had to serve so many different hours, community service, you had to attend these drug meetings, you had to attend these workshops, but you got a stipend. Kids want money, and the stipend was about $125, but it kept these kids going. And the cycle was, I'm gonna say, I don't know if you remember, DJ, but it was maybe 14 weeks. And then it was a new cycle of high school students that came in. But the Urban League, it was like pinpoint guys that we knew you call up and you find a job. I need a job. And these were these adults from 18 to 44, knew how to connect with some of us that can help them, maybe write a resume, find a job. We knew who had job opportunities for these brothers and sisters that are coming home that are stuck and won't be a victim to crime, going back to prison and things of that nature, because they get frustrated. You know, who wants to come home and make $10 an hour? That's really kind of hard, so they want to kind of see something. So, I mean, again, that's sort of, you know, we need to bring back some of those old those old habits or some of those old things that we had that were successful to help Miss Timmons become a police officer, to help Joe Bell to become this construction owner. You know, so those are some of the things I think, and it's just not all sports.
Thank you. In response to the question, yes. Yes.
So it's been really interesting hearing all of the comments going on because the library pretty much touches on everything that has been asked. We are a safe space. You know, we say that we serve cradle to grave, so we serve not only the children but the adults and the seniors in the community as well. We are open hours. We're one of the few community organizations that's open 7 days a week, 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. Programming that we have, we've hit just about everything. We have STEM programs, we have coding programs, robotics programs, we have home buyer programs, how to do renovations and stuff like that. We are that community space that offers free meeting room space throughout all of our 7 branches across the community. And then we've even hit on the reentry. We now have a reentry collection at our Howe location, and we're hoping to develop programming around that as well. So we want to remind people that we are there and we are there for the community. And as Commissioner Johnson said, or Jones, I'm sorry, we also have teamed up with the Department of Rec and have been offering some of the activity programs. But the problem with that is we are not a gym. We're offering stuff that's like the boxing, we've had jiu-jitsu programs and dance programs at our library, but our space is not designed for that. So that's our difficulty that we're seeing is that the teens coming in, they want that after-school release of physical aggression or physical activity after school that we just can't provide because our space is not developed or designed for that. We try to do as much as we can, but that's what we see the need for programming. It's more space for the kids to have for full on, not a small little meeting room, but a full community space for them.
Thank you. Councilman Johnson, and then I see your hand. Yes.
This part, I would just like to respond to Councilman's. We need a state-of-the-art community center that is dedicated just for our youth. We need it to be in one part of the town so that this building can provide different opportunities for kids. It doesn't have to just be about sports. It should be about a plethora of opportunities. If we said we only have a part of a school and we only have a garage, then why haven't we come up with a solution to address that? We're putting money into fixing up an old garage, and we're not putting money and putting thoughts into creating a dedicated space, because what our kids need is a safe space that they can go. And when you have a safe space that you know you can go to, mentally they can grow. You know, it's been many things that worked in the city of Albany for many years, but have been taken away. So when you take things away from a community and you don't replace them with other opportunities, this is what happens. The library is a good space, but it's not a great space for everybody because of the ratio. The ratio of kids that come over there, the staff can't manage them. Then it becomes problematic. So, you know, I hear things, you know, being that I work in the school district, I hear things said about the schools not being open, but the schools are open. The schools are dealing with programming from with the inside, so it was hard for it to be open for people to come from the outside. So, do you want me to just answer this question, or is this my turn?
If you have a question for community stakeholder or comment, this would be your opportunity.
Yes. So I think that the real conversation that we're not having is that parents can't discipline their kids. So kids are at a younger age becoming more rebellious, okay? So these kids are coming to school, and when they come to school, we have no alternative programming for these kids. So we have, you know, when I went to school, it was 1 or 2 people that were falling through the cracks. Now we have groups of kids that are falling through the cracks. So on my way to come to this meeting today, I went uptown and I rode around. And one of the things that I saw a group of kids, and it was maybe 8 males and 1 female. The female was carrying a bat, and then I look across the street from that situation. It was kids playing in a lot on used old tires. So some of the things that we can do, in the past, the parks have always been essential to the neighborhoods because, you couldn't send your kid all the way across town, but we had enough confidence to send them to the parks because in our parks, it was adults that cared. It was adults that created an environment that you just couldn't come and do what you wanted to do. So, we don't have that in our neighborhoods. If you ride around, it seems like we get, we're seeing different things. When I ride around, I see kids playing feet from people who potentially could be committing felonies. And, that's problematic for me. That is one of the reasons that made me want to be able to come in here and work with a group of people towards trying to alleviate that. We all know my personal story. My brother got murdered February 13th, 1993. Changed my whole family's life totally. And, I'm on a crusade so that we can prevent that from happening to others. But I wrote down a couple things. The sports camps that are being advertised are only on one side of the town. This is not me talking. This is the community. When they go to the website and they look at it, they want to know why, how are their kids who can't make it down to the community center going to make it over to Hoffman Park? So, what else did I write? And this is a question to the chief. I would like to know how many 911 calls were placed and how many cars were sent to answer those calls and how many reports were placed out of those calls. Because I'm having problems with some of the stuff that I'm hearing in terms of crime going down. Because if you go through the neighborhood, a lot of people feel like their calls aren't being responded properly. And I had a chance to be there personally to see it. And I think that this conversation is leading to why we are sitting here as well, because it's times that we can get people's attention and we don't. And so when people, you gotta understand, when people cry out and ask for help and they don't get help, they feel like they gotta take it into their own hands. And that's what's happening. And if you look at some of the stuff that we were dealing with last week was like kind of knee-jerk reactions. No one said his name today, but Elijah Cancer, that was a big loss for our community. And it's still, it's troublesome for me that a person can get murdered in front of a room full of people and still no one has really said anything. So you got to look at, it's a number of factors. People don't believe in trying to work for better days. And we have to catch these kids earlier. We have to do a better job of catching them earlier. And, it's a number of us that grew up in Albany around the same time. We have way more opportunities than these kids have today. They have more technology than we did, but it's almost like they're kind of lazy. And it's like, I coach basketball. I do a Saturday morning basketball program that, it was started off of a conversation between myself and my principal. We got no funding. I just knew a couple people in a couple places. Brian Fruscio, big shouts out to Albany Academy, provided me with basketballs. And we just opened up the door. The first thing I said to the principal is that we got to get that gym open. And whether it was a paid situation or not, because we had that. When Saturday morning, if you wanted to play basketball, you can go to School 23, you can go to Arbor Hill, you can go to Giffen, and it was probably other places you can go. But these opportunities aren't there. So now you have a basketball court, and the kids aren't there to play basketball. Kids are there to start trouble with other kids that are coming to try to do the right thing. And it's like they're not starting trouble with kids that are looking for trouble. They're starting trouble with honor roll students, And so now when their parents come they're not coming to talk because the first thing they say is, my kid don't do, and they're right about that. And their kids should be able to commute and travel through the community and utilize whatever. If they want to go to the library, if they want to go to Trinity, but we have to get a building that is dedicated to our youth, that is going to provide them a variety of things. We have nano science in our backyard that our kids aren't really connecting with. And, we got to start asking a question about that. We have Miss Jackson, who is one of the highest paid minority presidents, across the river, and we're not connecting with her. It's a lot of great things. Someone said it on Facebook today. It's a lot of great things that's happening in Albany. You just don't hear about the positive things. So I think that we have to strongly take a real serious look at getting some land that we can dedicate to our youth to send a message to them, because it's important. It's important for a group of people that, for generations that have been getting overlooked. And you hear the city talk about transitioning, we need to send a strong message to the parts that can't make the transitions on their own, and do a better job of trying to be a bridge for those kids that want it, because it's a lot of kids that want to be successful, but they get discouraged when you don't have the immediate success. So I think that when I think about myself, I think about the group of friends that I had. I was fortunate enough to have friends that I was in kindergarten with, and we're still friends to this day. That doesn't happen like that. When I think about our kids today, they're losing more friends than they have from their younger years. So this conversation has to touch on the lack of the ability for parents to discipline their kids, because you know what, my father's been gone for 20 years, and I still feel like I can't do stuff because he's on my back.
Okay.
And without parents being able to put fear into their kids, because without fear, you'll do almost some of anything.
Okay.
So I just think that we have to. Also, another conversation is that for my whole life, the county and the city have never worked together for the betterment of the whole city. And it's a lot of money that the county has, it's a lot of money that the city have, that they could be doing collaborations to enhance the services that we are lacking within the city. So I would like to see that be part of the conversation, because when you have that conversation with the county, sitting at the table with the stakeholders from the city, it sends a stronger message to all of the stakeholders involved. And then you'll see it's a lot of people that would like to get involved, but they want to see the city doing all that the city is supposed to be doing, as well as the county doing all that they're supposed to be doing, and then making it a little bit easier for them to come out and assist us in trying to address the things that have brought us here today. So, it was very hard to sit here, because, you feel, when I talk to people, and it was people here, and, if they don't get a chance to speak up immediately, they're gonna leave. So we may have lost some valuable input. And so it's no one perfect solution, but we definitely have to allow parents to hold their kids accountable for some of the things that they're doing.
Thank you, Councilman Johnson.
Yep.
So there was a lot there
It is.
to
It's
be
a lot.
unpacked. I do know that you asked a question of the chief, so I wanted to give the chief the opportunity to respond.
And I don't have those statistics, Chair, but I can have that information forwarded to Michelle so it can be distributed to the council. And so just so I'm clear, Councilman, you were interested in the 911 calls that we've had year to date, and I'm assuming was there some period of time that you were looking for?
Well, I just stick with last year.
Just last year, okay.
I guess, I've expressed to you about my concern about, when you hear the crime goes down, so, and just doing my
Councilman Johnson. So,
Yes, and I'll do that. I'll have year 2018 911 calls forward to Michelle so they can be distributed to the council. And I'll also have total cost for service as well, so you can have a better context also. And just as an aside, what you're expressing is not unusual. It's in fact it's very understandable, and we hear that across the country when municipalities are having drops in crime. And so the message is not that there's no fear of crime, or that folks aren't uncomfortable. So we're not suggesting that at all. And in fact, whenever crime is starting to drop in municipalities, it's very, very important that police departments address the issue of fear of crime, because that has much more greater impact on a community than just one crime that occurs. And so, but just for the record though, in year 2019, year-to-date statistics, we're looking at a 16% decrease in violent crimes from this time last year, a 1% decrease in property crimes year-to-date from last year, for a total of 4% increase, or 4% decrease overall in crimes year-to-date from last year, with increases in sexual assaults, burglaries, and motor vehicle thefts, decreases in homicides, robberies, aggravated assaults, and larcenies.
thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. I do want to note that you mentioned the community's input, and so I want to be respectful of the community members who are here and who are signed up. So for my council colleagues, I'm going to get to you. If you can ask one question for now, and then we'll open it up for the public. So Councilwoman Fahey was next, Councilwoman Judy Dochette, and then Councilman Robinson. And I know, Eva, you have a question or comment.
I have a comment and some responses.
Okay. All right. So we'll get to you. Okay. Yes.
Thank you. Let's see. First, I have a comment. Everyone's comments are just so important here today, and I'm very moved and also really proud of the things that are being done in this city for our youth, and the interest in improving what we're doing for our youth. I really appreciated Mr. Hood's comments about the need for kids to feel, families and children to feel connected, and how important those relationships, when somebody reaches out to them and forms those connections. I also, a lot of you have talked about this, but the need for more safety zones, and the need you mentioned for our schools to be opened, and I recognize you were saying, Derek, that a lot of them are open. So I think those are really important. I wanted to say to the chief, I've been on the council for a long time, and from the inception of our renewed community policing. So I know how incredibly important our beat cops are. And I think they are so important as far as kids coming home from school, making those connections with children. I feel like some of that has fallen off a little bit in recent years, because I know some of the beat cops have told me, well, I've got to go pick up my son, so my schedule, doesn't mesh with the kids coming home from school. I think it's extremely important for them to be on the beat, out on the corners when those kids are coming home from school, and I ask you to please make sure that happens. And I know there are other times that our beat cops are taken off the beat for various things. I just, want to emphasize that the community policing, having that police officer in that neighborhood all the time for neighbors to make connections with is extremely important. And so I wanted to say that. I also wanted to talk to our school district representative about, all of us know, we're talking about the importance of connections, and you have those kids at a very early age, and that's where those connections can be made. I know that there have been tremendous programs, whether it's grant money or what have you, for after-school programming. I'm thinking of, I think it was 3 or 4 years of after-school programming at Hackett, for example, to get kids, hold on to them after school. And that's when you engage these kids in other activities, whether it's sports or computers or the arts. And then that is such a vulnerable age too, from 6th grade to 8th grade. And then I hear these, about the kids at the high school when there's 50 or 60 kids, a gang of kids leaving school. And I wonder, why aren't they connected? And I hear about our sports teams in the high school that go begging for people to participate. There's just, that gap there is very concerning. And I know you haven't mentioned it, but I know that the school district is offering some programming during the summer. That's such an important time to kind of keep kids connected. So I guess I'm asking you, what are you doing to keep kids after school? I know you have programming, but we're missing a lot of kids. And then what are you doing to keep them involved, over the summer? And I'm very, I know we have plenty of programmings with the city too, but I'd like to hear from the school district on that.
Sure, thank you. I think it's really important to talk about what it's not just a summer initiative or effort. It's programs and partnerships that we're engaged in all year long. So it really goes down to relationship building, teaching kids how to act and interact with one another, how to resolve conflict. We're training our district staff in trauma-informed care. And so really that's about determining what the students need. So we do have a variety of programs available that we continue to build. And I think the recruitment part and the engagement part, so if students don't feel that they're connected to their school as a community, they're not likely to stay after. There are a variety of clubs, as you mentioned, sports, and summer programming. I'm not sure if you heard before, I did mention that we'll have 6 summer programs at 7 sites throughout the summer. This year, some of the programs go until 4:30. There's one specific to our ELL population, English language learner population, where we'll be offering breakfast and lunch. We have...
But that's an academic, isn't it? In the morning it's academic?
Yes, but there's also enrichment as well. So...
that's after the academic piece?
That's during the summer, but we do, during the school year, also offer after-school programming. I think, do you want to speak a little bit to sports and engaging students? Mr. Brogan might be able to better answer that one.
First of all, thank you for allowing us to come and be a part of this. We talked about Elijah Cantor, and I'm going to answer your question, but Elijah's death affected the school district more than people really know. We've been with SNUG for a long time now. We've seen some positive effects of our kids in the programs that we're starting. Some of the things, the see something, say something, we've really gotten our kids to buy into that. We've seen a lot of our youth come forward and tell us about things that are... I'm gonna get there. So what we're trying to do is to get them engaged right from 7 o'clock in the morning. My staff, I have 123 security monitors throughout the district. They are the first people that see these kids in the morning. So by training them and being trauma-informed, we can see these kids if they're gonna have a bad day. At the end of the day, probably 100 of my staff are still working after school, from 3 o'clock till 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I agree with Mr. Hood, I agree with Mr. Brown about opening our schools through the evening into 10, 11 o'clock, because we see that our kids are getting in trouble from 3 o'clock when they leave school till 4:30, 5 o'clock. That's a huge burden on the police department. If we can try to engage them and get them into the program. I have 3 pages of programs that we have at our school. We need to do a better job of getting those programs out to the kids and getting those kids to stay. We have seen an increase in our programs and our kids involved in those programs. Our sports programs have fallen a little bit in the last few years. I coach baseball at the high school. If we get 23 kids out for the baseball team, where before we would have 50 kids come out. Kids aren't into the sports as much as they were before. They're into the computers. They're into building their stuff and getting into these programs. Our programs that we offer at the high school, I have to employ people because we have so many kids in the school. So we are seeing an increase in the participation of our students. We just have to do a better job of getting them at 3 o'clock, because if they hear there's something going on in the community, they all want to go see it. Our job is to make them understand that we're here for them, and we're here till 10, 11 o'clock at night. My phone rings constantly from these programs. I want to hear what's going on in those programs, and if we can make those programs better and more accessible to our kids, that's what we have to do.
What level program, what level, school level are you talking about? Middle school and high school, or just high school?
All our schools, all 18 buildings that we have programs till 7, 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. Councilwoman Dochette.
Thank you. I actually wanted to chime in after Council Member Ballard made some astute observations. I think what brought us here is the murders in particular last year. I think that should not be our sole focus, and especially understanding that children learn
Thank you, Councilwoman Doshett. And I believe Mr. Brown mentioned that there will be the annual violence prevention. I don't want to speak for you, but a rally that happens every year that we marched last year. Can you just plug that again, please?
Yeah, this will be the 5th annual Guns Down Peace March with Bridge the Gap and Snug usually put on every year. And I just want to talk about real quick, what you was talking about as far as the guns. And people don't realize that, you know, you're 3 times more likely to get shot or killed or in prison if you have a gun in your house, you know. And that's the thing that we need to talk about. Why have it if it make us a target now? You know, if it make us the aggressor now, or the person to be feared now. So that is something to be addressed. But yeah, right now it's the community calendar that's going around, and we're about to share it on our website. It's along with our organization, Trinity Alliance. And it's in response to a lot of people not knowing a lot of things that's going on. So we're putting it out on our website along with Trinity Alliance and Dee Delgado, who's organizing this all. But it's a community calendar where anybody can go on there and they can upload anything that's going on in the community, because we understand that not enough people know what's going on, or like Dr. Miller was saying, that too many things actually clash on the same date. So you can look forward to that.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. And I'll just ask that, Michelle, if we can link the community calendar to our Facebook page so that council members are aware and the public who visit our page can be made aware of what's going on with SNUG's initiatives. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'll keep this brief. I think one of the things we have to remember that violence is not the disease, but it is a symptom of a disease. And we have to remember that communities where the violence has been the greatest have been dealing with generations and generations of neglect, and have historically suffered from the disease of systematic racism, such as redlining and also the war on drugs. And I just want to hit on a point that Reverend Poindexter mentioned about home ownership opportunities. When we talk about home ownership, me and my wife, we are looking to buy a home, and of course we want to stay in the 5th Ward, but my wife wants a move-in ready home. So we've looked for a move-in ready home in the 5th Ward, and over half of the buildings in the 5th Ward are vacant and abandoned, so we can't find a move-in ready home. And if we want to buy a home, our only options are probably to rehab a home. And so we have to keep that in mind. And so when we talk about these communities, we need to have an honest talk about reparations. Reparations for the communities who have historically suffered from systematic racism. I think and so we need to talk about reparations through policy, and also reparations when it comes to development in this city.
Thank you, Councilman Johnson.
I want to respond to a few of the statements
Robinson,
and
I'm sorry,
question.
Councilman Robinson.
I'm sorry. So regarding some initiatives with the City of Albany centered around training and jobs, not only do we have our workforce development department that is in partnership with the Department of Labor that provides a path to employment and scholarship dollars and training. We have our Capri program that connects people to training like CDL, nursing, different kind of trades. We also have our My Brothers and Sisters Keeper initiative, The executive director is Willie White, where we work on training and getting people in academies to train for employment and economic stability. We also work with the Albany Housing Department, Albany Housing Authority, I'm sorry, and partnering with them and other nonprofit organizations to provide different kind of training and education. As to address the statement regarding programming in our other wards besides over by Hoffman, we are working to provide programming in 3rd Street Park, as well as we partner with other nonprofits and individuals to make sure we utilize our Arbor Hill Parks and our Arbor Hill Community Center. We are looking for qualified individuals to provide not provide that service, but to work with us. We have an issue with sustaining people that are going to stay employed as rec aides or helping facilitate people who want to come and enrich our community. So as a city, we struggle with that, and we're looking for qualified individuals that are willing to do that work. Now, as we talk about equity in the city of Albany, and I do agree with you, Councilman Robinson, that we do suffer from a lot of systematic injustice, and that's why we focus on equity to work as hard as we can to provide certain services centered around social determinants of health that include, but not limited to, mental health, housing, and education. Our main focus, my main focus and my job is access to information. It's an issue that we had for a very long time in our community, as well as inside of the city of Albany. It's just the information being funneled to the people that need it. So a more collaborative effort in the whole city of Albany, and not just individual groups working on these projects, because I can tell you that I sit around a few tables in the community and there's about 4 organizations working on creating a community calendar, as well as the city of Albany. So we need to work together more and try to figure out a proactive approach to address these issues. I'm sorry, I wrote some notes down. I want to make sure I cover everything. But yes, that is the main thing. And if anybody ever has any questions regarding community outreach, things like that, partnerships, if they have anyone that they want to suggest for employment as far as to our recreation department or any other department, please reach out to myself or our HR department, because we are looking for qualified individuals and people who are willing to work alongside of us to address these issues.
Thank you very much. Michelle wanted me to put out there, if you all have community-centric events, if you email Michelle, she will make sure they go on our calendar so that the public has access to that information. And question, are these paid rec aid positions? And if so, what is the hourly or salary for those?
They are paid positions. Our paid positions start at $13.78 an hour.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a different one. $13.78 an hour. In our summer positions, we also start above the minimum wage at least $12.50 per hour for each of those positions. And we do have camps outside of just Hoffman, as Eva mentioned. Last year we started with Livingston. We also have our Arbor Hill team in here. They have been here for 3 years, if I'm not mistaken, 2 or 3 years.
4.
4 years, thank you, 4 years. And so we do have those positions available, but if anyone is interested, I will be here. Our office is open, and we are still looking for positions, including lifeguards for our young people or those who are 18 or above.
Thank you. Last question. We talked about our community members re-entering. Are those positions open to individuals who have been incarcerated?
Yes.
They are. Okay. Thank you. So with that, I want to open it up the floor to our community members. I'm going to start with Ms. LaToya Tucker, if she is here. If you can come up. Okay, so you don't have a comment? Okay, all right, thank you, Ms. Tucker. All right, Mr. James Davis, if you can come up to the table and state your name, your address. And then for public comment, how much time? Well, 3 minutes. 3 minutes, and so my colleague is keeping time, so we'll turn it over to you, Mr. Davis.
All right, thank you. Good evening, and thanks for sharing. There's a lot of great opinions and suggestions towards our shared concerns for the city of Albany and our youth. My name is James Davis. I'm a lifetime resident. A lot of y'all know me. I'm born and raised here in the city of Albany. I'm also a community advocate. I'm a business owner, and I'm also a full-time parent.
Your address, I'm sorry.
Oh, 90 Dove Street. So just to put emphasis on a lot of shared concerns, we always hitting the hammer we're hitting the nail right on the head. As far as programming, we all have some great ideas about programming. I'm just going to put some emphasis on it. I think a computer networking system program would be great for our youth and young adults. I think an economic program would be great. Community engagement program as far as police officers would be great. A couple trade programs. I feel like these are programs that are relevant and that can be beneficial for our youth and young adults that they can take with themselves as they move through society. As the council member said, he said a lot of our shootings and things of that nature happen by young adults. So they need skills that they can take with them outside of our programming that we're gearing towards our youth, so that we can diminish the violence that's taking place. Another thing that was said as far as our organizations, I'm born and raised here. I know a lot of people. We got a lot of great ideas, and we create these organizations with these initiatives, but then we're separated by, as Dr. Miller said, political lining or red taping, or let's do it my way or the highway. I was a victim of that too, so I understand that. We have to humble ourselves a little bit, and secondly, my main concern is this: why I'm here, because I'm deeply involved in the kids. I've been doing my restoration program in the city of Albany for 10 years, and the third ward, the Pigeon Pocket Park. My thing is this: we have to get ahead of the violence. I understand that, right? So in getting ahead of the violence here in the city of Albany, how we go about policing, right? Because my thing I see is this: just like in the public, you have generations who suffer, and what I mean by suffering: lack of parenting, lack of absence of a father, right? So now you have people in society who are able to keep themselves together, make something of themselves, but at the same time, subsequently, really don't want to deal with the nonsense, right? So by default, we continue the same thing over and over again. This is the point that's very important that I want to make. As far as the police department, right, we have the same thing happening. And I'm going to jump to the solution. I feel as far as policing right now, getting ahead of the violence and doing what we need to do for the program for the summer, I think it will be ideal for us to bring a lot of the older uniforms back, the senior officers back. Reason being, I get that they put their time in, they put their work in, and they want to say, you know what, I did my job. Although the reason why I'm saying that is because they understand the behavior, they understand, they know the community members. They can say, oh, that's such and such grandkid, that's such and such son. They get it. The young, ambitious officers, respect them,
Mr.
thoroughly,
Davis.
love my city, but they moved a little too abrasively when it comes to certain situations and what causes other situations. So that was my main concern, because I'm out there every day. And as a citizen, And
Mr. Davis.
at the city of Albany, if I go to help the police officers, or I go to say, hey, want to give them information or insight to a situation that happened, and they're already tunnel vision, blood in their eyes, hey, get away, hey. It makes it hard for us as a community to say, you know what, I can put trust in him. I know him, whatever ethnic background she or he has, I can still talk to them as a human, morally. We can still deal with the issues, our shared issues in our community, and get through some things.
Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Absolutely. So I appreciate it. I'm kind of long-winded, but I kind of want to point that out because these are the issues that I'm going to be facing as I get out here and I work with the kids and advocate for the kids and what's going on to give them a healthy alternative to our summer to help with the issues. So thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Miss Melanie Metzger. Oh, Melanie. Okay. Mr. James Bolden.
Thank you for the opportunity for the council.
Thank you.
Chief, one of the things that
I'm
happened-
sorry, a name,
Oh, I'm sorry.
address.
Okay. My name is James Bolden, 14 Timbrook Street, Albany, New York.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chief, one of my very close relatives told me something, and I've had numerous conversations with her, and she told me something that happened 50 years ago, and of all the things that's happening in the city with the police and the community, it has created just some emotions. She told me 50 years ago, she lived on Herkimer Street, and a gentleman, a black gentleman, starts running up Herkimer Street. A police officer was chasing this individual. He shot this individual. This individual fell down, and the officer emptied his gun in that person, and she, as a kid, was saying, why does he have to keep on shooting him? And she's never told me that story before. And I was surprised that, I do remember that incident, but I never knew that she had saw the incident. And just recently, a couple of weeks ago, she told me about it. What I'm saying is that what is happening in the city is raising up a lot of different concerns from people, and I think that you're trying to address them, and I applaud you for doing so. But I just want you to know that those things are out there. Secondly, that police review board process or citizens complaint process or whatever it's called, I went through that with another relative, and I just want to say that I just think that the ability that they have not to subpoena, not to investigate, I know there's a process or another event coming where that will be addressed, but I have just witnessed that, and I was assisted by Ms. Love's husband, County Legislator Mert Simpson. He was very upset about that process also. He saw how well meaningless it was. And lastly, I just want to say that the gentleman here, I guess he left, he raised a concern about the school system and about the library, and they're just so closely connected. I know that a former school board member once said something to the effect that I believe it was that from grade 1 to 3 you learn to read, and from 4 to 12 you read to learn, and that so many of the problems that the kids have concerning what Mr. Johnson was talking about, the disciplinary problems, is because the kids just can't participate because they just can't read. And we somehow need to figure out how we can get those kids involved. And lastly, this is a plug for a recent book that I read by a gentleman named James Lipscomb, who grew up in abject poverty. He graduated from Albany High School. He slept I was always embarrassed that I didn't get my own bed till I was 14, but he slept 4 deep, him and 3 of his brothers. The meat they got was always sticky and green. They had to cut it off. He had to go to school with, his lunch was always a biscuit and butter. And I think that that book is called I Got Shoes by James Lipscomb. I think the kids need to read that their circumstances don't define them. And they can overcome very, very difficult circumstances. 11 kids, abject poverty, and he wound up being a Columbia Law School grad, and 2 of the guys he was sleeping with, 2 of his brothers, wound up being Howard Law School grads. So I think that that book is very important because he's one of us. He's from here. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Bolden. I just want to know, I know that we are giving community members 3 minutes. I want to be respectful of the fact that you all have sat here and listened to us talk for a good amount of time. And so at the 3-minute mark, I will not just cut you off, but I just ask that you be mindful that there are other members who want to speak after you. So I want to give you the opportunity so that we can hear you as you have sat here patiently listening to us. Our next speaker is Marlon Anderson.
Good evening, members of the council, member of the public. Of course, my name is Marlon Anderson, longtime community advocate, former candidate for mayor, 214 Lark Street in the city of Albany. I'm coming forward. When I speak, I like to be understood that I'm speaking from a voice of experience. I have for a very long time worked on the issue of violence in the community. I've worked with SNUG for many amount of years with almost every director of SNUG except for this one, and because I haven't had the opportunity, but I've worked with almost every director of SNUG on violence in the community. I've hosted countless meetings on violence in the community in free spaces like the Albany Public Library. I have worked with the Albany City School District hosting meetings and creating opportunities to focus on violence in the community. So I'm speaking from the voice of experience when I say it's all well and good that the city of Albany is taking the baby steps that they are today on this issue. But if we are going to address the issue of violence in this community, an issue which has been a long time coming. Again, people like to speak about the amount of violence that happened last summer, but the same amount of violence happened the summer before that. And the same amount of violence happened the summer before that. And I'm speaking on that as a fact. This is not something that just one summer happened. This has been ongoing for years in the city of Albany. We've had an excess amount of violence, and we've had a minute amount of response from the city to address the violence. And hopefully, while this is a baby step that we're taking, I hope this is a harbinger of the giant steps that must be taken if we are going to address the violence in the city. One thing we can address, dealing with SNUG. If SNUG is going to be an effective deterrent or an effective tool to address the violence in the urban community, then the fact of the matter is the SNUG model must change. And I say that in giving you an example. We speak of the death of Elijah Cancer, but the death of Elijah's cancer should have been a cry to tell you that that model needs to change when your most positive representative can die by violence, as you said, in a room full of people and nobody wants to identify them. That's telling you that the model is not working. We have community stakeholders that have marches and organizations in the community, but while those marches were going on, people were still being killed. So that's telling you that that's not working as well. We have to basically understand that the status quo actions that we have been taking against violence, the same faces, the same names, the same games are not working. And if we're going to change the game, if we're going to change the mindset, as I can't remember what it was, if it was Mr. Hood or if the other gentleman would say, if we're going to change the mindset, we have to change the game. And we have to avail ourselves of the spaces and resources. One of the things that we had in the city of Albany that we don't have, that we had when I was coming up, And what everybody needs to focus on, everybody, whether you're a child or an adult, wants to have a good time. That's all you want to do in the summer. You want to have a good time and hear good music and laugh. And one of the things that is missing and one of the spaces that we're not taking advantage of is Washington Park. When I came up in Washington Park, we had radio stations in the park every weekend, playing music from noon to dusk every weekend. And every kid in the city, you know where they were at? They were in Washington Park. They weren't on the corner of First and Quail. They weren't down on the corner of Second Ave and Tunis and whatever the other streets are down there. They weren't down on the bottom of Lark Street. They were over in Washington Park. And you know what they were doing? They weren't fighting. They weren't shooting. They weren't killing. They were dancing. And one of the things you have to understand, the greatest weapon we have in this war against violence is hip-hop music and hip-hop culture. If you go over to the Black Festival.
Mr. Anderson, I just want to note that the 3-minute mark has come. I'll let you finish your
All right, thank you very
comment.
much, and I'll be brief. I said, if you go over to the plaza once a year when we have the Black Festival, and you see the kids over there dancing and singing, dancing, people, dance troops, showing their things off, that's the key. We have to take the kids back to that. If we take the kids and give them the opportunity to have a good time, to dance and to sing and to laugh, that'll take them off of the corners where the negative influences are, where the guns are, where the drugs are. But we have to avail ourselves of that. And in order to get back there, we have to think out the box. And we're not going to change the game with what we have went through tonight. That's where we got to go. We have to go to that direction and with those type of ideas. But I hope this is just the first step down a long road. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I just want to, in response, I know that you touched on the rallies and the work that 518 SNUG is doing. The community members that have been brought here today recognize that their work solely will not address the issue of violence in our community, and we have to do a better job as a community supporting their efforts, also recognizing that 1 or 2 community initiatives will not address the problem. So I know that you pinpointed their programs and the rallies and the work of SNUG, but I think that as a community, we have to do a better job supporting those who are rolling up their sleeves and putting in the work, in addition to other suggestions that are coming forward from you and other community members. So thank you, Mr. Anderson. Our next speaker is Ms. Beverly Pageant.
Good evening, and I thank all of y'all for being here to have this discussion. But like someone previously said, there were adults that died last year. All right, the 15 homicides were adults. We're doing just like the school district did. Every time somebody new come in, we work on a certain age group, and then we drop the ones that have been previously dropped, and they don't have any place to do or any place to go. We've been through this in 2009, where the stats said that crime had dropped, but the fear of crime is still in the community. I don't fear from the kids, I fear from the adults, all right? They're the ones that have nothing to do. This city is gonna train these people and still not give them a job. They need a job or a stipend in which they have training so that they can get money. You know, that deters a lot of things. They have nothing to do. There wasn't a kid shot last year, and all the programs that's going around, what happened to the females? 2 gentle giants died last year, helping females. The females that were fighting downtown, okay? The domestic violence that was uptown, and my friend got stabbed in the heart. They were helping females. Where are the programs for females? They start stuff and then walk away. You know, The men are fighting because of the females. What y'all doing about the females? They're just as rough as they can be. And women are jumping women. All right, we have to do something. Okay, we don't have guns, but we're still doing the same thing. And that fear is still there. The fear is still there. So no matter how many times the stats drop, and we have a billboard to prove it, okay, the fear is still there. I'm still scared to come out to my house. I don't go to anything in my community anymore, you know? And when somebody can walk, and it had to be an adult, up my driveway or up my lawn and drop shards of glass on my porch, that's intended for me. So I'm not afraid of these kids. It's the adults, the ones that are sitting around doing nothing. Okay, if you got some older adults that have some experience out here, pull them in and let them be some mentors to keep the younger ones from going astray. But we got to concentrate on some of these adults. You know, and like I said, I appreciate everything y'all do and everything y'all been doing, and my grandkids and stuff have been in y'all programs, okay? But we miss the group. And every year, we miss the same group. And it's the same age group that comes out here killing each other. And if you notice, I say about the middle of May or just before Memorial Day come, we're gonna have a new influx of guns for the summer. Happens every year, all right? Just not that many people die as they did last year. But we've been doing this a long time. And now all I see is instant replay. And Councilmember Ballaran, I'm glad you brought up the adult situation because everybody's thinking about the youth. The youth copy off the adults. You know, I see parents bringing kids in their cars to fight.
Ms. Pageant, I just want to note that the 3-minute mark has
But
come.
I just want to say congratulations for everybody beginning to come together and to work on this together because that's what we need. We need collaboration with one another instead of always fighting with one another. Thank you.
Thank you. Our final speaker is Alana Klein.
Hello, members of the council, Chief Hawkins, Madam Chairwoman, Mr. President. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Alana Klein. I live at 29 Glenwood Street, 12208. I'd like to commend the council as a whole and this committee in particular for coming together to address the, not to put it lightly, but unfortunate circumstances of violence that occurred in the city last summer. Previous speakers have said that it's been going on for years. I just recently moved back to Albany in 2015 and got involved, as you all know, with the council summer 2017. So this was extremely new to me last summer, and it was very hard for me to take. But I'm not going to try to pretend I can put myself in the shoes of people that were actually affected. I've heard a lot of great ideas tonight, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on the issue or an expert on violence prevention, and I'm not going to pretend, as I alluded to a couple seconds ago, that it personally affected me. I don't know that any of this tragic violence occurred in my ward, personally the 9th Ward. But one thing I have heard that was very powerful, I believe, Mr. Hood, you mentioned this, and a couple others reiterated, is getting guns off the streets and out of houses. One issue I've addressed personally is if I had access to a gun, I can promise you I would not be here today. Guns not only increase the risk of suicide due to depression, but they also increase the risk of potential domestic violence. which is not the issue we're per se addressing here specifically today, but it's just, I don't know what the city can do. I know I've seen stuff in the past, churches and community outreach programs, gun buyback programs. So I'm not sure what they can do, but I think the main step is, or one of the main steps I should say, is just getting the guns off the streets. And I hope that if gun ownership picks up in the summers, that we can find a way to prevent that. Again, I'm not an expert in how to do any of this, but I would invite anyone in on this side or the other side of the banister, if you have me on social media, tag me, message me about these types of programs, about community support picnics, stuff like that, so I can be there to voice my support. I know I haven't been the best in the past, no matter what I've tried to do, but this is everyone's city, and we all need to come together to try to avert this problem and make sure it doesn't recur summer after summer. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have additional members of the public who would like to comment. Mr. Samuel Wiggins.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Samuel Wiggins, and I reside at 49 West Willow Street, Albany, New York. I've been a member of this community in this city for the better part of 25 years, and in that time I've seen a number of different events and a number of different tragedies take place in this city, and I've been drawn in, and I want to say first and foremost that I'm grateful for everybody's attendance here, and for my own privilege to participate in this discussion, because this is something that hits on vital points that touch my soul. You understand what I'm saying? And that when I see us come together like this here, I'm only thinking about how we can help one another develop, you know, these different resources that we're talking about. When I think about some of the different venues that we have in this community, how they can be utilized, you know, as a group of individuals. It doesn't have to only serve one purpose, you know, because we have a number of different places here that can be multi-use and purposeful for us, because we got different places that can serve as a gym, yet also serve as a venue for discussions and meetings, or other groups. I also facilitate a men's group that assist individuals who are coming back from recent incarceration. We was talking about the adults, and I'm glad that got touched on. And I've been doing that for over 10 years just on my own, without any funds from anyone else. The 100 Black Men actually assisted me in housing that organization and that group for the last 10 years. We are now going to be moving into a new venue for individuals who are coming home from recent incarceration, because they need to have some assistance with that transition back into the mainstream of society. You know, that's not an easy thing, and our culture in this city somehow never allows individuals to fall into the cracks. We bring them right back into a situation that offered them no more than what it offered them when they went in. And we have to assist them. We can't just say, make it on your own. You know what I mean? We don't do this by ourselves. Nobody does anything by themselves. We all have to help one another. You know, this is a process that requires all of us to show a little more love. See, because the reality is I got to look past what I don't like and love you anyway. We call it unconditional love, you know, because I understand that we didn't get here in a small amount of time. It didn't take us 1 or 2 years to get here. It took us several years. It's like they say, you can't walk into the woods for 20 years and think you're going to get out in 20 minutes. You know, it takes time. This is a process, and we have to remain committed to this process. We can't talk a good one for a little while, and then all of a sudden, you know, it just kind of, you know, falls to the wayside. We have to continue to stay committed to this process, and we're all going to have different perspective and different, looks at this matter, but we can't quit because we become, a little emotional about it, or someone becomes a little offended about something that needs to be said. We all have the right to speak what's on our minds, and we will help each other grow up. We do. We have to help one another grow up in this process, because in the same breath, we are losing so much. We have so many young people, old people who have a lot to offer. Some of those individuals who have, come home from recent incarceration are still getting treated like they just committed a crime. These are returning citizens. They are they've paid their crime and they're still paying for it, and you can't continue to make them pay by not being able to allow them to be part of the labor force, or allow them to be part of the educational arena where they can learn how to become different people. We're talking about reinventing yourself. You know what I mean? That's what it takes, and it takes this group of individuals here to continue to make it accessible for them, because it's difficult. They don't know how to find their way. We assume they do, because we have these images that they reflect, and they have these different mannerisms that sometimes we don't know how to get past. You know what I mean? Just like we have these youths. And I need to say, they are what we call bad habits. We are a society of habitual behavior, and the reality is that just like people have trouble quitting smoking, you ever see they put all kind of
Mr. Wiggins.
things out for people who smoke cigarettes?
Mr.
We have
Wiggins.
individuals
We're at time.
who are addicted to a certain perspective, a certain behavior, a certain lifestyle. And once someone told me about the broken glass syndrome, the environment that you have these folks in, they become somewhat used to, and they've been groomed to accept things the way they are, and they don't know how to see their way out of this here. We are their eyes, we are their voices, we are the people who can help move them along the way. Thank you for letting me share with that.
Thank you. Good to see you. Next, we have Lisa Good. Minister Lisa Good.
Good evening. Thank you for this opportunity. My name is Lisa Good. I live at 41 Bonheim Street, Albany, New York, 12204, and I'm a lifetime resident of the city of Albany. And so I just wanted to very quickly share a couple of things with you. I'm the founder of Urban Grief, and the vision of Urban Grief is resilient and peaceful communities empowered to promote healing in the face of crisis. The mission is to respond to the trauma, grief, and loss by providing comprehensive solutions to families and communities in the aftermath of violence. And I commend each person that's here, because you all are on the front lines, and I want to say thank you. I just want to give you a little bit of an idea of some thoughts that boys and men of color and people living in urban poverty are disproportionately affected by violence, by trauma throughout life. While the causes of violence are complex, there are salient factors associated with the presence of community violence in our urban neighborhoods, which manifests in further exposure to violence. Violence is correlated with low socioeconomic status, higher rates of crime, deficient housing, minimum resources, and unemployment. People of color residing in neighborhoods with concentrated disadvantage experience higher rates of crime and community violence, fighting, and police-related incidents, which result in high levels of victimization. The first thing that I want to point out is that I question if we would be having this discussion if it had not been for the homicides. And that is concerning to me, because the number of non-fatal injuries, non-fatal shooting incidents is substantial in our city and have been at least for the last 3 years by my count. The other thing is I question and wonder if we would be here having this discussion again if it had not been for the homicides, when we have all of these other people and their families who have experienced trauma and devastation as a result of gun violence. So community violence results in high level of victimization. So as we talk about this issue, I hope that we will consider the concentric circles of victimization within our city. The next thing is that in terms of the impact, high rates of exposure to violence and explicit victimization have been linked to mental health problems. There is a vast amount of literature on depression that recognizes the correlation between environmental threat, violence, poverty, and social isolation, and depression, and also post-traumatic stress disorder. However, when the cycle of violence is continued, it's not just about post-traumatic stress disorder, because at least in a post kind of setting, there's opportunity for recovery. But when you have year after year cycles of sustained violence, not just homicides, but also non-fatal shootings, stabbings, and jumpings, and assaults, what we have are individuals, both young and old, living in neighborhoods that are experiencing sustained traumatic stress responses that don't meet the level of post-traumatic stress disorder, which means that they are not getting the attention and the support that they need. The last thing that I want to say is that when we have resource poor environments, that contributes to the stressors, which include community violence. The interpersonal and community factors play a crucial role in shaping individuals and decreasing stressors, which means when we come together and function as a community, we have an opportunity to heal, and we need to include, when we talk about violence prevention, we need to include how will we incorporate safe spaces within our community that address the need to heal in the aftermath of trauma and violence. I have a concern that mental health and that the trauma that is sustained by children and families within our neighborhoods continues to go unaddressed and ignored. We need culturally competent, responsive people. Service providers must be accountable to our communities to serve our victims. I am one person, and the little bit of salary of funding that I get has been cut. I am one person paying and supporting victims out of my pocket with the support of SNUG and Trinity Alliance. We must come up with comprehensive ways to support our victims within the city of Albany. It's not just the homicide survivor. It's not just the person who's been shot. It's all of the people who are connected to those individuals, work, homes, community, school, churches. It's all of us. We are all connected, and together we must heal in a connected way that is culturally responsive and responsible. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Good. I want to note that Minister Good was one of our invited guests and leaders to be a part of this conversation, and I'm sorry that I did not note that you were here. But thank you for your remarks, and they were well received. And I just want to note, Minister Good, that the equity legislation that was mentioned includes funding for violence prevention programming, and we specifically noted 518 SNUG and Urban Grief as programs that should get awarded funding pending the passing of that legislation. So I just wanted to note that. Ms. Maytoon? And after Ms. Toon, we have one last speaker, and that's Ms. Shakira Hernandez.
Good evening to all of you. Last name is Toon, first name is May. I just want to say that it's a pleasure being amongst, Albany's finest.
Thank you. And you reside, Ms.?
Yes, I live at 90A Schuyler Street.
Thank you.
Okay, my biggest concern is our youth, though. I work as a teacher's assistant at Albany High School, and I wish that we had more people that look like Jamel Hood, for these kids can really relate to them. And that's a big problem that I think that's here and that I would like to speak about. Sometimes when I talk to the kids at Albany High School, and if they're hanging in the hallway, and I'll say, why are you hanging in the hallway? They was like, look, Miss May, sometimes they don't understand me. Sometimes these teachers don't look like me. They don't walk in my shoes. I don't, you know what I'm saying? I don't feel like I belong here. And I'm like, wow, but you have to get your education, though. Some things that they just don't understand, though. And when I was a child, I had to listen to my mother. And some of these kids say, listen, you know, I come from a single-parent household. It's really hard in my household. And I'm like, wow, you know, I really feel sorry for these kids. But what I'm trying to get at is just that I think that we need to hear more from the children. Because a lot of times, as you know, as parents, we always tell our kids what to do. Because when I grew up, we had to listen to our mother. We need to have a forum where these kids can speak. And with that being said, though, I work with Mr. Johnson at Giffen Elementary School because my kids go there too. I have a first grade and sixth grader that go to Giffen. And we created a program called When Giffen Parents Speak. We give the parents an opportunity to speak as opposed to the administrators all the time telling us what to do with our kids and stuff. We allow parents to come on. We just started this program, you know, it's live on Facebook though. We're just getting it, you know, it's kind of fresh, so we're just getting it together though. But what I'm trying to say is just that I think that the next forum that you have, you should bring younger children here to speak about the violence, to speak about what's going on. Let them have a say as opposed to us always making rules and regulations for them. I think that'd be a great idea for the youth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and noted the lack of youth present today.
Yeah.
Thank you. Our last speaker, Ms. Shakira Hernandez.
Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Shakira Hernandez, and I reside at 300 State Street in Albany, New York, 12207. I'm going to say something really brief. I love how we're all concentrated on programs, but we should be invested more on how we approach these teens. You know, as a millennial, a lot of adults in the older generation, we get talked down to. That sometimes will make such a difference in a teen's just daily interaction with other teens or, you know, authority figures because of the fact that we're not putting them down. If everyone in this room takes a second and just remembers the last encounter that they had with a teen or someone under 18, we didn't ask them, how are you? We kind of, so what are you doing? You know, it's just the approach that we should, you know, be a little more sensitive to them because they are going through their own struggles. And I feel like sometimes there's a lot of disconnect with our teens, with adults and authority figures because of that, the way that we approach it. So they feel uncomfortable on trying to find resources or someone to confide in, to talk to when they have these problems going on, when they don't have someone's shoulder. And I feel like, honestly, I love the fact that we're all thinking about programs, but I feel like we should start thinking about how we approach them and how we engage with them, down to the police officers that are on the block, whatever. Everyone in this room has an encounter with the teenager, and we don't acknowledge them as an equal. They're not our equal, but we should at least, when we're speaking to them, make sure that they feel that way. So that's really all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. So that concludes our public comment. Thank you all for staying and also letting your voices be heard. I overlooked Councilwoman Joyce Love, so she will give our final question/comment, and then we will conclude.
Thank you, Dorsey. My comment is, I hope Commissioner Jones is still here. Okay. I know you talked about the boxing gym, the fitness center, the Arbor Hill Community Center, and the garage downtown. Is there any plans to open up any more sites, and what type of programs are you planning on implementing?
At the current moment, I do not have any plans to open up any other sites. However, listening to what the community has expressed between last Thursday with our youth present and with adults and here today, that's something I'm going to bring back to the mayor and the council to express moving forward.
Thank you. Thank you. So in terms of next steps, I know I've been taking lots of notes. These notes will be typed up and shared with the stakeholders here, and as chair, I will re-engage our stakeholders so that we can connect the dots on the questions and comments that were brought to the floor today, so that we don't just let this information fall on deaf ears. So I will be connecting with you in the very near future regarding everything that was discussed today, and then look at additional opportunities for us to connect, to solidify strategies to roll out. So if you would like access to the notes, please leave your name and email address with us before you leave this evening, and we'll make sure that you get the notes and next steps from tonight's meeting. Thank you, community leaders, for staying the course and staying. Thank you, media, for being here. This concludes our public safety meeting.
Yep, thank you.